Hello and welcome to the Craft Beer Corner. Today's episode, we are doing our fifth installment of our side series, the Tavour beer review series, which if you did not catch the 4 prior episodes, Tavour is a company that lets you get your hand on craft beer from all over the country and indeed internationally that are really excellent quality beers that are hard to get your hands on for most of them. They sell out very quickly or don't ever even get outside of the market where they're brewed. So finding them, if you don't live there, is an impossible task in many instances. For today's session, we're going to be reviewing 3 really big Imperial Stouts. The first is going to be the Evil Twin 120 Days Dry Aged Stout. That's an Imperial Stout at 17.5% ABV. Evil Twin is based out of New York. They dry age the malts. If you can see on the label, dry aged, it's got a cow. There's no dry aged steak or anything in here. It's just a nod to the dry aging of steak because they dry aged the malts. For the second beer, it is the Anhapee Brewery's PB Hobo, which is peanut flavored Imperial Stout. This one's 8.5% ABV. They are out of Wisconsin. And then finally, Prairie Artisan Ales Paradise, which is a vanilla coconut Imperial Stout at 13% ABV, and they are, of course, out of Oklahoma. So 3 really big beers, 2 brands of which I have tried prior, one which is new to me, but all 3 of these are going to be new beers, so I'm really excited to jump in. I love stouts, and I really love Imperial Stouts, so I'm excited to see what these 3 have in store for us today, and we will get started right off with the Evil Twin 120 Day Dry Aged Stout. All right, jumping straight in with our first beer, the Evil Twin 120 Day Dry Aged Stout, 17.5% ABV on this one. Dry aged malts. This ought to be pretty interesting. I'm not sure how one would exactly dry age malts, but we're about to find out and see what characteristics it imparts on this beer. Got a little sloppy on the open, but anyway, let's get this poured right in the glass. This glass won't hold this entire beer. That is a fact. It's very thick and very dark as I'm pouring it. I can see that quite clearly. Considering it's coming from a can, and I'm not the best beer pourer in the world, that actually formed a decent head. It's really starting to dissipate quite rapidly already. It has a nice kind of light brown color to the head due to how dark this beer is. And if I hold this up to the light, it is black as night. You cannot see through it at all. But let's go ahead and give this a sniff, see what the aroma has in store. Okay, so on the nose, you can clearly smell it is very obviously a stout, and it's got a lot of malts in it. And it has a slight sweet smell to it. So I don't know if they use any lactose in this or not, but it's got a sweetness like you might get from a milk stout, though this isn't billed as a milk stout. But it also smells quite roasty, almost smoky in quality, which I don't know if that's due in part to how deeply roasted the grains they chose for their malt bill are, or if it's due in part somehow to the dry aging process of said malts. But it does smell rather strongly. Yeah, and it's an interesting mix of sweet and rich and roasty, bordering on smoky, not dissimilar to a Scottish wee heavy or a Rauch beer. So this ought to be interesting. Let's go ahead and dive right in and see what this tastes like. That's a really big beer. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a big, heavy beer. That's big and heavy. This I might even quantify as a dessert beer. It's so rich and so dense and so heavy. That's got a lot of breadth to it. Okay. Up front, you do get a sweetness. So I don't know, again, if they brewed with any lactose to try to make a milk stout. Maybe the dry aging, you know, paired in tandem with lactose to make it sweeter, but big burst of sweetness up front. And then it dissipates into really, really roasty notes. I don't think that this beer is brewed with coffee. It certainly didn't say it was a coffee imperial stout or a coffee stout at all. But the roasty, deep, rich roastiness of the malts that they use imparts that flavor, just like it does bitter, dark chocolate, like baker's chocolate. So you get that almost like a combination of baker's chocolate and a really, really finely roasted French roast coffee bean. And that could be where some of that smokiness, earthiness comes through, and that kind of peaty quality, that wee heavy Rauch beer quality I was describing in the aroma, it comes through in this quite clearly. It does have a smoky quality, and it's really nice. It's a very complex beer. It is very viscous. The mouthfeel is super thick, super viscous. It sticks all around the palate. The body is ridiculously heavy. You can feel this beer in your mouth, and you can feel it sitting after you swallow it. It's a heavy beer. Yeah, and it's got a boozy edge to it. As you might expect, 17.5% ABV, that's a tremendously high ABV on any beer, imperial or otherwise. That's a very, very high ABV indeed. It's got this little boozy edge to it. It's not overtly boozy, but you can taste it. You can tell that the alcohol is there, but it's not overpowering. It's just a kiss of that boozy edge to it, which I like in a high ABV beer, much like you get in a lot of barley wines or in some big kind of Belgian strong ales and American strong ales and those big Trappist triples and quads. You can often get that little boozy edge to it. I like that. You should. With an ABV that high, in my opinion, you should get that. But this is a good beer. It's very big, it's very rich, it's very dense, and the finish is very, very long. I can still taste that mix of sweetness and roastiness and smokiness all around my palate. It sticks with you. It's a really nice beer. We'll come through at the end and get this its full rating, but for now, I'm gonna think on it while I come up with the scores, take my time enjoying this, and we will come back and get to our second beer, the Anhapee Brewery's PB Hobo. That one's out of Wisconsin at 8.5%. Okay, so moving on to our second beer of the day. This is the Anhapee Brewery's PB Hobo. This is a peanut flavored imperial stout at 8.5%. This comes out of Wisconsin. Got a very subdued looking label, just very basic looking, but a peanut flavored imperial stout really gets me excited. I love all things peanut, peanut butter, anything like that. I am a massive fan. And if I ever find a peanut or peanut flavored stout or porter or any beer really, I always am keen to buy it because I love peanuts and peanut butter, but I'm normally let down. The peanut and peanut butter doesn't really translate into the beer. So I'm very curious to see what this one has in store, if somehow maybe they've cracked the nut, and that's not really a pun because peanuts are not a nut, they are legumes. Look it up. At any rate, let's take a peek at this. This is another one that is just black as night. I cannot see a hint of light through this, even holding it straight up to my set lights. So for an imperial stout, they nailed it out of the gate. I expect it to have very earthy, roasty, rich, deep flavored malts with such a deep, deep color. Formed a reasonable head, considering it's not on a tap. It didn't get particularly large, it didn't bloom that much, but I was pouring rather gently, and it's still holding nice and true with very tightly fine bubbles, and they're clinging to the side, and I can actually see a fair bit of effervescence riding up into the side, keeping that head alive on the edges of the glass. So looks quite nice. Let's give it just a slight swirl to agitate a bit and give it a sniff. Wow. Okay. That actually really smells strongly of roasted peanuts. You can still pick up a classic stout in the back and the roasted malts. You can get the stout quality, but it's 85% peanut up front and 15% malt. If ever I were hopeful for a peanut or peanut butter flavored beer, maybe potentially delivering, this would be it. I've never smelled one that actually smelled like it, but this does. I don't know what type of peanuts or peanut butter they put in this beer and or in what quantity, but it's very, very roasted peanut flavored. So let's go ahead and jump in this. Fingers crossed. Oh man. Oh, I am in peanut butter heaven. Okay, I finally found one that did it. Oh, have mercy. That is so good. That is so good. Unbelievable. Wow. That is so much roasted peanut or creamy peanut butter or a combination of the two. That is very pronounced. It's very forward. Okay, so what I was just saying about no breweries ever getting it right, I found one that did, and it's Anhapee Brewery out of Wisconsin. PB Hobo is aptly named because holy crap, that's insane. I have never had a beer of any type, stout, porter, strong ale, whatever, that actually had a pronounced peanut forward quality to it. This is peanut first and beer second, and that is not a bad thing at all. The stout quality of this is very nice. It's got a nice quality stout back, very nice quality ingredients. You can taste that, and you can taste the roastness and the deepness of the grains, but the absolute star of the show here is the roasted peanut. This is so peanutty, it's insane. You have to taste it to believe it. You absolutely do. I have never had a beer that claimed it was peanut or peanut butter that actually delivered, and this one does, and it does it in spades. Oh my goodness. Oh, that is absolute heaven. That is just peanut stout heaven. Ah! Golly, golly, there I go. I did it again. I said it. Yeah, that's right. I said golly. I'm that excited. Gee willikers. This is such a good beer. It's ridiculous. This is so peanut forward. It's just incredible. Somebody finally figured it out, how to do it. I swear I may have to reach out to the brewery personally to ask them what their secret is, because I have never had a peanut or peanut butter beer that even came close to tasting like what I was envisioning in my mind, and this does, and this nails it. Okay, let's tell you the important bits. The flavor, as you know, it's blowing me away. The aroma was very peanut forward. I'm going to have another sip just to make sure. Oh yeah, it smells of roasted peanuts on a stout back. So the peanut certainly is front and center. That's the main player of this beer. The body, as dark as it is at 8.5%, it's just a medium to medium heavy body. It's not super heavy. And the mouthfeel, it does have a little bit of viscosity to it, but is not as much as you might think. But it's silky smooth. It's a silky smooth mouthfeel, and you can feel all of the effervescence of all of the carbonation in the beer as it rolls around your mouth and on your tongue, and it's tiny, minuscule bubbles. It's just silky. It gives it this really silky quality that's just lovely in the mouth. It feels fantastic. The finish is quite long, and it's peanut and peanut and peanut, and that is by no means a bad thing. Oh, I can't get enough of this. I cannot get enough of that. That is so good. It is just blowing my mind with how good this beer is. I am absolutely loving this. Loving this. Loving this. That's 3 times I said it. I am loving this beer. Oh my God. That is incredible. That is incredible. Other important notes, you already know about the head and the retention, and even though I've jostled it and taken a few sips and the head did settle, it's still got that same quality. It's quite effervescent, those very fine silky bubbles like I described in the mouthfeel, and still bringing up that carbonation to keep that head tightly formed with these nice silky bubbles on the side, even though it's not riding with a nice floater. You can see kind of the horizon line, as it were, or a meniscus. It's formed right on top with a beautiful tight foam head, and those bubbles just keep rising. It's lovely. It's super silky. This beer has just so much going for it. I have never had a peanut billed as a peanut or peanut butter beer that I've ever like properly enjoyed this well. I've done some home brewing. I brewed a peanut butter and jelly beer that I really enjoyed, but even that with just gobs of natural peanut butter added straight into the boil did not have as pronounced of a peanut or peanut butter flavor as this. I mean, they must have dumped pounds of it in per pound of malt. It is so forward, it's so prominent and ever present. PB Hobo, this is a home run for me. I absolutely love this beer. I am a peanut and peanut butter fanatic, and this is the beer I've been waiting for years. Well over a decade, I've been waiting for somebody to nail it, to crack the nut, to figure out the secret, and Anhapee Brewery has done it. I am blown away. I absolutely love this beer. We'll come back and give you the full rating. I'm going to take my sweet time enjoying every last drop of this beer while I come up with the ratings, and we'll come back and do our next one. The Prairie Artisan Ales, which ought to be fantastic. Their Paradise, which is a coconut vanilla Imperial Stout at 13% ABV. We'll be back in a minute. All right, moving on to the final beer of today's Tavour review. This is all Imperial Stouts. The final beer is the Prairie Artisan Ales Paradise, which is a coconut vanilla Imperial Stout. This one's 13% ABV. Again, Prairie Artisan Ales is out of Oklahoma. I've had many beers by Prairie Artisan Ales. All of them are top notch. This is another new one to me, never had it. So I'm very anxious to try it. And if history is any lesson before I even pour this, I know it's going to be super thick and super dark. And indeed, as I expected, it is ridiculously thick and pitch black. Just as I have come to know and expect and love from Prairie Artisan Ales. Now that actually formed a really nice head on there for an Imperial Stout from a bottle. Again, no tap, but that's got a really nicely, tightly formed head on there. Yep, cannot see light through it at all. It is pitch black. So far, so good. Let's give it a sniff. You can smell a little booziness to it, and you can smell a hint of the vanilla and coconut, but it's not the overwhelming flavor. It smells like a really high ABV Imperial Stout is what it smells like, with a little twinge of booze. Just the subtlest hint of the added coconut and the vanilla that's in there. It's subtle, but we'll see how pronounced it comes out once it gets on our palate. So without further ado, head looks great. It's holding true, really nice, tight and frothy. Let's jump in and see how this one tastes. Oh, that's really good. Oh, that's really good. That's rich. It's got a chocolatey quality to it. Sorry if this cut looks a little wonky. My dog started going bonkers, so apologies. But at any rate, I'm going to take another sip because I completely lost my train of thought. Yeah, it's very rich, very decadent. It's got this chocolatey quality to it and this nice booziness. And you can actually taste it. It's not overbearing, but you can definitely taste that kind of boozy edge to it, which Honestly, I personally like in a higher ABV beer, kind of let you know you're drinking something a little heavier, a little more special. And it actually complements the other character traits of the beer, in my opinion, particularly in a big, bold Imperial Stout. Now, make sure I didn't misread. Yeah, with coconut and vanilla. It's definitely in there. It's a subtle, subtle hint. The bulk of the flavor that's coming through to me is very deeply, deeply roasted malts. It's got this big, big, rich, chocolatey quality to it, which I don't think it's brewed with chocolate, but it could be some really nice, deep, richly roasted chocolate malts. It's dessert-like. It's very dessert-like. And it's very rich. I think it might be the subtle hints of the coconut and the vanilla that are pairing with the deeply roasted malts that is adding like this subtle kind of sweet flavor profile that adds with the roastiness that maybe is giving the impression of like a chocolate syrup or a fudgy nature to it. Even though it's not a chocolate beer, not brewed with it clearly, the way that the flavors blend in here, they give this nice chocolatey, rich, decadent dessert-like quality to it. And on the finish, you can get the just a slight hint of the coconut and a slight hint of the vanilla. But the dominant flavor that's coming through to me is this really rich, deeply chocolatey nature that's absolutely delicious. It's not what I was expecting, but it's not a bad thing. It's a very, very, very good beer. And again, one this big of an ABV, I do like that nice little booziness to it. Gonna take one more sip here. As you might expect, as is very typical for Prairie Artisan Ales, big imperial beers, the body is really big. It's very thick. The mouthfeel is also quite viscous, but it's very silky. So this is very quintessential Prairie Artisan Ales beer example for my money. This really is just another classic example of why they're one of my favorite brewers out there, period. This is a fantastic beer. We'll come back at the end. I'm gonna take my time sipping on this one and come up with my ratings, and we'll come back here and get all three ranked and go through the numbers. All right, now that we have sampled all three of these absolutely delicious beers, let's go through and get them the ratings, starting with the Evil Twin Brewing 120-day dry aged stout. Again, these are all Imperial Stouts. This one was 17.5% ABV. Really huge, really big beer. High ABV. The highest here by quite a substantial margin. The aroma on this one, I liked it. It was very upfront, very present. You could get a hint of the smokiness, but overall it was nice. I thought it was well above average. I gave that an 8 out of 10. For the taste, I went a point higher. I give it a 9 out of 10, and it was really interesting. It was very rich. It was very roasty. As I described, almost kind of Rauch beer or Scotch wee heavy with like peated smoked malts. That was kind of the impression I got, and it was nice. Though it did have a bit of a lactic side where it had this kind of lactose sweetness to it, almost like in a milk stout. So it was an interesting mix, but I think it worked. 9 out of 10, I thought well deserved. The body, this had a huge body on it. I had to give it a perfect 10 out of 10. The mouthfeel, the same thing. It was so thick and so viscous, and it just stuck all around the palate. You could really feel that thickness and that weight. I give that a 10 out of 10. The finish on this was ridiculously long, and it was very, very complex. It let you pick out all of the independent parts and flavor profiles that went into making this beer what this beer is. And it was very, very enjoyable, and it was super long, and it was a super clean finish. I gave that a perfect 10 out of 10. Head and retention, you know, it's always a crapshoot when you're not taking it off of a draft, but from out of a can into a glass, it did very well, certainly above average. I gave that an 8 out of 10. For the appearance, this was black as night. That to me is the benchmark for a perfect Imperial Stout. I gave that a perfect 10 out of 10. The balance on this was very nice. I thought perhaps the dry age quality of it could have been a little more present, even though it was there, certainly just being billed as 120-day dry age, and it certainly, don't get me wrong, It was very in your face, but I would have liked it even a little bit more of a punch from that smoky, earthy aged malt. It was such a unique flavor in a stout. I really enjoyed it. Also thought maybe the sweetness was just a little bit on the intense side for me, considering how it was paired, but I still gave it above average, 8 out of 10 for the balance. Feeling and intangible, I really enjoyed this beer. Evil Twin always brews great beers. They brew very interesting and unique beers. This was certainly no exception. I give that a 9 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, I also gave that a 9 out of the 10. I thought for an Imperial Stout, especially this high of an ABV, this was a very unique take on the style. That dry aging of the malt was really a clever idea, and it worked very well. Well-earned 9 out of 10. That brings the total score up to a 91 out of 100. For our second beer, Anhapee Brewery's PB Hobo, the peanut-flavored Imperial Stout at 8.5% ABV. This beer, to say that I loved it is to put it mildly. Aside from being a hophead, in the realm of food, one of my absolute favorite foods in the world is peanuts and peanut butter. I'll take them any way I can get them. Boiled, baked, fried, it doesn't matter. Peanut butter, natural, creamy, whatever, crunchy, I couldn't care less. I love peanuts. All kinds of peanuts. I'm a massive fan. This is by a mile. I mean, it's not even in the realm. Nothing else I've ever had to date has even come close to even being in the same race or on the same playing field or even in the same universe as this beer to call itself peanut or peanut butter. This beer was unbelievable, and it was so peanut buttery, flavor forward. It was insane. I know they used just a ludicrous amounts of peanuts in the brewing process, and it showed, because I've never had one this good in my life. The aroma, it smelled so good as an Imperial Stout and just punched you in the teeth with peanut. I mean, you knew it was going to be special, and indeed it was. I give that a perfect 10 out of 10. The taste, you're going to start to notice a recurring theme here. Perfect 10 out of 10. I could not have anticipated how good this beer was going to be. I'm normally a little disappointed with peanut or peanut butter beers. This one just blew them all away. There's no contest. This is the one to get. Forget all the other offerings. Get this one. Do yourself the favor. You won't regret it. The body, as an Imperial Stout, it was fantastic. It was really big, very thick, very luscious, very heavy in the mouth. I gave that a 9 out of 10. Well deserved. The mouthfeel, I mirrored the body. It was really silky smooth, but it was ridiculously viscous, and it really stuck around, which really let you continue tasting that peanut, and it was great. 9 out of 10. Because of that big heavy body and that nice viscous mouthfeel, the finish on this lasted forever. It just stuck all around the mouth, and it was just a beautiful combination of a wonderful base Imperial Stout that was just loaded with peanuts and executed absolutely perfectly. I give that a 10 out of 10. The head and the retention, again, as I've said many times, off a tap, you never know what you're going to get, but this certainly formed well above average for an Imperial Stout. I give that an 8 out of 10. The appearance on this one, another one that was just as black as night. You could not see through it. I give that a perfect 10 out of 10. The balance on this, I couldn't have asked for a better balanced beer. I really couldn't. You got the base Imperial Stout, but the peanut was the shining star, but it was still in harmony, and I give that a perfect 10 out of 10. Feeling in the intangible, I've been looking for a beer like this for decades. This checked all the boxes. This is the one. If you're a peanut fan, peanut butter fan, peanut beer or peanut butter beer fan, forget everything else. If you can get this, get your hands on it. This is the one that you want to buy instead. Perfect 10 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, as a peanut Imperial Stout, I don't think that this beer has any equals. I gave that a perfect 10 out of 10, bringing this up to what I think may be the highest rated beer I've done to date, a 96 out of 100. If that doesn't tell you just how well executed this beer was and how much I absolutely loved it, and I cannot possibly say that enough. I loved this beer. I have been waiting for this beer my whole beer drinking life, and I finally found it, and I wish I could get cases of this. It was that freaking good. Unbelievable. 96 out of 100. Absolutely well deserved. That brings us to our final beer of the bunch. Another fantastic offering by Prairie Artisan Ales. This is the Paradise. It was a coconut and vanilla Imperial Stout. This one's 13% ABV. This was classic Prairie Artisan. I've never had a beer that was less than stellar that they've done, and this was no exception. The aroma on this, it was a nice aroma. It was a little less present than I would have liked, and I would have liked to be able to detect a little more coconut and vanilla on the nose, but it still smelled really delicious. So I did give that above average 8 out of 10. For the taste, again, I really liked it, but as it was an Imperial Stout with coconut and vanilla as like the main flavor partners in it, I would have liked them to be a little more present, but aside from that, I could only dock 1 point because it was absolutely delicious beer. Had this fudgy quality to it that was unexpected and really amazing. 9 out of 10. The body on this, as with most Prairie Artisan big Imperial Stouts, 10 out of 10. Just huge. You couldn't do it better. The mouthfeel, the same thing, just wickedly viscous, just sticks all around and lasts for days and lets you pick out all the flavors you're getting for a really long time. And that mouthfeel is just so silky and thick. 10 out of 10. The finish on this one, even though it had a very, very viscous mouthfeel and a nice heavy body, the finish didn't linger as long as normally I get from Prairie Artisan Ales or indeed most Imperial Stouts. It was still well above average, but not quite up to the same level as most of the others I've been reviewing from Tavour. I still gave that an 8 out of 10 and well deserved, well above average. The head and retention on this was one of the best ones I've poured from a bottle in a while. It really held. It was super tight, really creamy, foamy head that lasted and clung to the glass and really stayed in there a really good long time. 10 out of 10 for me. The appearance on this one, another one, black as night. Give it a perfect 10 out of 10. That's what I want to see. The balance on this, just like with the taste and the finish, I had to dock some points, and it really just had to do with the flavor additives that were in it and what actually came through. I would have liked a little more forward vanilla and a little more forward coconut just so I could really pick those out. And I'm not saying it was bad, it wasn't. It's just when I'm getting a mouthful of fudge and I'm expecting coconut and vanilla, I'm not saying I was let down because honestly it was absolutely delicious. But I was expecting coconut and vanilla and I didn't get but just a subtle hint. So I gave that an 8 out of 10. Filling in the intangible, I loved it. Again, I docked 1 point just because I was expecting a little more vanilla and coconut and I didn't get it, but still a 9 out of 10. Finally, as an example of the style, I gave it 1 shy point of perfection. I gave it a 9 out of 10, again, for the same reason, because it's an Imperial Stout with coconut and vanilla, and I just didn't get enough of the coconut and vanilla. But otherwise, it was a well-executed Imperial Stout, top tier, 9 out of 10. That brings the total score on the Prairie Artisan Ales Paradise to a 91 out of 100. So 2 91s, 196, only a 5-point spread. All 3 of these beers are absolutely amazing. If you are only catching this as the first Tavour beer review series, Tavour is a company that is geared to craft beer lovers. You can get your hands on really hard to get or impossible to get craft beers from all over America that you otherwise would not have access to, and even beers from other countries around the world that we never get outside of this. So far, this is my 5th review I've done from my first shipment of beers from Tavour, and they have all been rock star, top tier, world-class beers. I highly recommend them. Check them out. It is absolutely worth the time. You won't regret it. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, thank you so much for joining us. I hope that you learned a little something about some more beers out there in the marketplace, maybe gave you some ideas about what to try to get your hands on out there, and hopefully you learned a little something and found it at least mildly entertaining. But thanks as always. If you want to keep in the loop and keep up with our content, we drop multiple videos weekly. You can like and subscribe. We are building our channel. I would really appreciate it. It will keep you in the know with all things craft beer. And if you want to know exactly when all of our episodes release, you can click that notification bell. You will know as soon as they go live and published to the site. And thanks again. Until next time, keep it beer, keep it craft. We'll see you on the next one. Cheers.